Hi everyone, I'm James and this is Gamez According to Jaymz. This episode is going to be a little bit longer. I apologize if you hear me taking a drink once in a while. It is an episode about women in gaming and some of the things they face. And it's going to be, it's probably going to divide some people, and that's to be expected. But it's a topic that is applicable outside of gaming as well, in various STEM occupational fields, and just in general a lot of times. But it's something that's been on my mind for a while now, and I have reached out, as many of you probably know, about trying to get that discussion going. Now, it's not something I've always been aware of or that has bothered me, and really it's something more recent, last couple of years or so. Excuse me. But yeah, it's something we should all try to be aware of and deal with when we see it. Now, I offer no solutions. I don't have any myself. I can only speak for myself and act on my own behalf when intervening with such events. And I'll be the first to admit there are many women out there who do not encounter any issues, and for them, I'm quite happy to hear it. They're in a welcoming environment. That's great, but I would dare say at least as many do face these issues. And for the guys out there who say, "Oh, it doesn't happen around our gaming or in our communities," you might want to look a little deeper, because I guarantee it does. In some way, shape, or form, it happens. You just don't notice it because it doesn't affect you. Now, me becoming more aware of this goes back about a year and a half or so. And when a local gamer to me shared a blog about something that happened to her at a local gaming convention. So I'm not going to use names because, frankly, the names really just put a face to things, and I don't want to do that. First of all, I've never spoken to the people involved, so I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to use the story, and those of you local to me will know who I'm talking about, so I don't need to give names. Those of you not local to me have no idea who these people are, so it really won't affect you one way or the other, knowing or not knowing who they are. Now, the local con runs twice a year typically, and this female gamer is relatively experienced. She plays in a weekly game. She still plays in a weekly game, but she played in a weekly game of D&D and a weekly game of Pathfinder. Now, this gamer has various social issues, anxiety and what have you. She doesn't deal well with large crowds, but in trying to deal with these things, people like herself, they go out. They try to grow, adjust, what have you. So she joined this game, and it turned out somebody she knew was at the table as well, but she was the only woman. And throughout the game, various things happened, and it really triggered her anxiety and whatnot, and so on and so forth. And that's what she wrote about. But I'm going to highlight the three main red flags that happened while she was playing in this game. Now, the first thing she encountered was one of the players was playing a female character while on the surface, it's not an issue. However, he was very, very descriptive of her appearance and her breast size, to the point of describing when the group is meeting originally at a tavern. She's in this sheer robe that's barely being held closed because of her enormous cleavage. And she was effectively nude underneath the robe. In-depth description. And she felt uncomfortable, but at that point she was like, you know what, maybe that's just the way he is, what have you. So now when they're out adventuring, whenever it was his turn to explain what they were doing, he would describe in detail how her breasts would move or bounce or jiggle and things like that every time it came to him to describe anything. Now, I don't know about anybody else out there, but I'm not role playing to have basically softcore porn described to me. Um, if I want to visualize that, it's pretty easy to find it on the internet, free. It's not hard. Um, but that's how this guy was playing his character, and I don't know if maybe he had a boob fetish. I have no idea. Personally, I don't want a guy next to me describing how he views boobs moving around like that, because frankly, if that's what he's doing, my guess is he's never seen one or touched one. But that's just me. So the game continues on, and they get to a point where the female gamer's character was successful at obtaining a note, or at least information. But rather than hand the information to the female gamer, whose character is the one who obtained it, he hands it off to one of his buddies to his side, who then reads it, shares it with the guy next to him, who reads it, then hands it back to the GM without her ever getting her hands on it, and tells the rest of the group, "Oh, this is what we need to know. This is what we need to do." She asked to see the note more than once, and the GM, as well as the other players who read it, straight up told her, "You don't need to read it. We already know what's in it." Now, I've run games. I've been in games. And I can tell you right now, not one GM I have ever had, nor myself, hands off a note of information to the players who didn't obtain the information. If it's written on a note, every GM I've had, and every time I've had that situation as a GM, I've handed the note to the player who was successful getting it. Why? Because they're the player who got the information. I'm going to leave it to them to disseminate that information. But here she was being straight up told she doesn't need to read it, even though she was the one that was successful in obtaining that information. So that was the second red flag. Moving on past that, though, once they got into combat, Boob Guy had like 5 minutes to explain what he was doing and all these other descriptions. And then the next guy took his turn, which was fairly normal. And then they got to the female gamer, who said she wanted to do a certain special ability and combine it with something which she was perfectly capable of doing. And they repeatedly said, "Look, just make a regular attack, because we don't want to have to explain the rules to you. We don't want to have to do this. We don't have to do that." And she kept saying, "No, I want to do this." Eventually the GM just looked at her, said, rolled at D20 and said, "She attacks and misses, moves on to the next player." So when she brought it up as an issue, the GM straight up told her, "Listen, let the real gamers game, honey." Now, this all happens while a player she knows is sitting at the table, a player she plays with every week and knows she knows what she's doing. And that player didn't say one word at all the entire game to kind of back her up. And frankly, the whole situation, that pisses me off the most. I expect crappy behavior from gamers on average, because a lot of them don't have very good social skills. So I try to treat them accordingly. But in this situation, the guy should have stood up. And that's at a convention. This was a convention that's been going on for over 20 years, where it's supposed to be family friendly and welcoming and inclusive. Whether you're new or not is irrelevant, because it's a convention. It's a public space demonstrating all these games. So why they felt the need to treat her so differently, I don't know, especially with the fact she was an experienced gamer. And reading that blog kind of opened my eyes a little bit. It was definitely eye-opening. And I contacted her and we talked a bit. We don't really talk much anymore, but that's another issue. But she shared the blog, and I shared it, and a number of other people shared it. And the convention organizer of that convention saw the blog and shared it to a Facebook group for that convention. Now, that leads into a whole other story of the fallout from her blog. And locally among gaming groups, actually. See, the convention organizer is the only person in charge. He has people that kind of help and whatnot, but they have they have zero authority, none whatsoever. He's also the only moderator and administrator of the group. So he shared this blog, and it immediately started getting reactions, both good and bad. And it immediately started a heated discussion. One he was obviously ill-equipped or just didn't want to deal with. So as soon as it started to get heated, he declared and basically demanded everyone shut up, do not discuss it. He's going away for the weekend with his family. Now, I don't know about anybody else out there, but I know when I'm told not to do something, I generally do the opposite, especially when it's something important. And it's just, you might as well throw gas on the fire and say, don't worry, the wind will blow you out. And it just makes it worse. And sure enough, he was gone for the weekend. That didn't stop anyone from discussing it. And it blew up and turned into an absolute disaster. For both sides, I would say. Because many on one side showed a side of their character I don't think they realized they had, and that's not a good thing. And a few on the positive side, like myself, but a few other people showed themselves to be a little more over the top as well, which wasn't good. Either way, as the organizer, as the guy who posted this, he should have known better to say, oh, don't discuss this because I'm going to be gone for 2 days. We'll appoint somebody to be a moderator, and he didn't do that. So as he's gone and this ramps up, a number of women joined the group, some of whom were already in the group, because, well, it's a convention group. There's going to be some women. And we were very, like myself and a few other men. There weren't a lot of men on the same side I was, but there were some. We were very supportive and very vocal about more needing to be done at this convention beyond just going to the organizer because he's the only one with authority. Women aren't going to feel comfortable going to a man if they're being harassed by a man. That's human nature. You want to go to somebody you can relate to. So we're very vocal about that. The problem was an equal number, if not larger number of people, and I will say this, the vast majority of them were straight white men. And I'll delve into that a little later, about that demographic later. And they were very opposed to doing more, thinking the X card was enough. Now, the X card is something where you can lift it up and say, look, I'm uncomfortable with this. Can we fast forward or just gloss over it? And a lot of people thought even the X card, they didn't want to use the X card at their games because they were running R-rated games. R-rated games, mind you, in the middle of the day at a quote-unquote family-friendly convention. And their reasoning, by and large, across the board, were they felt such efforts would stifle their creativity as storytellers, and that, well, they've never treated women poorly before, so why should more be done? They've never seen it in that way. And that the efforts, and with Dave being the authority figure, that was more than enough. More wasn't needed. And even at that point, a couple of people that were in support of the efforts being made already as enough were saying, oh yeah, we only every table had an X card, and you can go to the front desk and file a complaint and things like that. Problem is, there were just as many people saying back they didn't even know the X card was in use at certain tables. Some GMs said we never even had them, so how can you use them if you don't know they're there? And it was an absolute disaster by and large. And it just got worse, back and forth. And even though they were saying, we've never seen this problem and we've never treated women that way, the con is safe, it really wasn't. There were a few women who spoke up and said, no, they've run into issues before. And they were just completely ignored. And finally, myself and a few others had enough with these guys, and I know at least 2 other people, in addition to myself, pulled our games from the upcoming event, which was only, I think, 3 or 4 weeks away. I had 3 sessions on a day. I was doing a full day of demo games. I pulled all 3 games. At least one other person pulled 1 game, and another person pulled, I think, 2 games. So there's 6 slots that just got pulled because of this. And I know myself and these 2 other people, we have not set foot in a venue that has hosted this event since, and there's been 3 of them since. And I won't until management changes, but that's just me. And you know, after the weekend passed, the organizer came back. And he came back and basically lost his mind, more or less just on the people who were wanting him to do more, and really not saying much to the people that were coming after us for wanting to do more. So he declared that the X card was enough, and that he was readily available, even though he wasn't. And this is in the face of at least one woman receiving threats of violence and rape via private message. And she wanted nothing to do with telling him about it. She was going to the police on her own. I really don't know if anything came of it after that. But yeah, he declared the X card was going to be enough, and he's got his assistant at the desk who's female, and he was easily available to be approached. And many of us were refuting that. It's like, no, you're not. You're usually flooded by people wanting your attention, so it's very hard to talk to you. Between sessions, the person who's running the desk is also taking cash or selling snacks or what have you. So the problem is, like, he kept saying, oh, well, you know, just report it. And here's the thing, like I said before, he's a straight white guy. If a woman is being harassed, is she going to go to a straight white guy, or does she want to go to a woman? Now, yeah, there's a woman at the desk with him. Here's the problem. The woman has no authority. She has to go to him. He's the only one with any authority, and therein lies part of the issue. If all authority lies in the hands of one person, you got a problem, and not a good one, because the person's not going to trust you, especially when a large number of the storytellers at this convention are buddies of the organizer. And a number of them are the ones who were behind him saying, oh yeah, you know, you just report to him. The X card's more than enough. In fact, it's way more than it's needed. So here we have storytellers who run games at his convention, who are his friends, supporting his stance that he's doing enough. Do you really, anybody out there think these women would want to go to him to report one of his buddies running a game? Because I wouldn't, and I'm a guy. I'd deal with it myself, which wouldn't end well. The end result of all this, he started to mass delete posts and comments. And not everyone's. Just people like myself, the 2 other guys who pulled their games, and a number of the women who were very vocal in saying more needed to be done. And not only did he mass delete posts and comments by all of us, he kicked us out of the group. This is the fallout from just this one person's blog. Now, the only person who didn't seem to get removed was the female gamer who wrote the blog. And I'm sure all of you can understand why. It would be an unmitigated disaster for him to do so. Being the person who wrote the blog, he himself shared as a proactive measure to show that more needs to be done. As for the people who came after myself and others and were very much rah, he was doing enough, nothing happened. Nothing at all. Their comments remained, their posts remained, with a number of them being, you know what, I'm glad this guy does this. He's unheralded. He's this. He's that. He's great. He's awesome. Meanwhile, everything that was refuting any of that had been deleted by the convention organizer, who's again is the only admin and moderator of the group. And if you can't see the problem with that, then you need to maybe have a few drinks of coffee and wake the hell up. Now, the thing is, after that, after all this died down a little bit, a bunch of us just, threw our hands up and said, you know what, screw you, we're not coming back. We never have. It came out about 6 weeks later. After that upcoming event, there were some accusations of harassment against people from the convention towards the staff at the hotel bar the event was hosted at. Oddly enough, they switched venues right after that, citing costs. I never heard anything was done about the accusations. And honestly, since then, now this is anecdotally by a few people I know who did go, every event has had slightly less attendance. Now, I doubt this alone had that effect. There are some other reasons I think it was declining, but the con is not anywhere near what it used to be. It's at a smaller venue. It generally has a smaller attendance now. And I think this had a major influence, but not the only influence, to be sure. And that's kind of where I first kind of opened my eyes to looking around and saying, whoa, okay, this isn't good. I need to look into this and kind of be more aware and conscious of what I'm doing or saying when women are gaming with me, because I may not know I'm doing something offensive or in somehow diminishing their efforts or their participation. I don't know. And I kind of stayed with that and kind of back of mind, just on and years and over a year goes by and I'm just doing my thing, playing my games. But in recent weeks, it's kind of been more front of mind. And again, some of you will have noticed I've shared articles and I've brought the subject up a few times. And then when I decided to do this generic podcast for gaming, first thing I did was reach out and put a post out there saying, look, I want to deal with this subject. Excuse me. Women are important to gaming, so I want to deal with this subject. I would like any women who have an issue to contact me. We can have we can have a verbal interview. You can email me. You can text me your stories. Whatever they wanted. In any way they wanted to contribute, I was willing to let them contribute. Because these aren't my stories to tell, and I wanted them to tell them whatever way they were comfortable to tell them. Now, I got a few, but it was kind of scattered over the next few weeks leading up to today. But by and large, I didn't get anything right away. And in fact, I got not exactly the best feedback, and all from guys, no doubt. No doubt, all guys. I can tell you that right now. Always guys. But there was 3 main ones I took away from this. The first one was guys basically saying, good luck with that. Yeah, okay. Look, I don't need luck. I'm doing a personal podcast on my computer, which I'm recording and hosting myself. I don't need luck to do it. That was the first thing. Next one, I got a couple of, well, you better be careful. Women and maybe the LGBTQ community might come after you and attack you for doing this, which I couldn't fathom. I'm addressing something that is something they would want, I would think, addressed, because they're the ones facing harassment and discrimination and whatever issues they have. So I'm not even sure where that came from, but again, it's people who probably don't think about what they're saying. Now, the last one kind of bothered me a little bit, just a little bit. And that was a few people coming out and saying, who am I to speak on behalf of women or even LGBTQ plus on these issues? Here's the thing. I never said anything about speaking on their behalf. I was leaving the door open for them to speak on their own behalf through my podcast, to share their stories and things they faced all on their own in whatever way they wanted. Recorded interview, I would post links for the interview, or I would at least directly transcribe them to read off, what have you. I was willing to say these stories anonymously on their behalf, or put their names to it if they wanted that. It had nothing to do with me making stuff up or anything like that. It was all about giving women the opportunity to voice their stories and issues. Not only that, who am I to speak on their behalf? I'm a straight white guy. Not for nothing, we're the biggest demographic in gaming by far, be it video games, role-playing games, war games, CCGs, hell, even the current board game phenomena that's been going on for a few years. It's largely straight white guys. And as long as we ignore it, it'll never get dealt with. So guys like us are the ones who need to step up and speak up, because if we don't, guess what? Nobody else will. And generally speaking, those who have a very quiet minor voice get ignored. And that's essentially what's gone on for years. So, and not only that, I'm not a completely straight white guy. I'm 3/4 white, 1/4 native. So, but that's not, that sounds like I'm trying to say, you know what, well, I'm part of a minority. Not really. I was raised as a white kid because I didn't know I was even any native till a few years ago. So that, I'm just pointing out that I'm not completely white, but I might as well be for the purposes of this. I'm a straight white guy with a family, and I'm part of the biggest demographic in gaming. So yeah, you're damn right, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to speak up. And I'm putting myself on the line for some of this because I've already encountered a lot of blowback. And it's just, it's I don't understand why. I have trouble wrapping my head around it at times. But, you know what? I've never been one to shy away. I'm pretty handy with taking a machete and hacking my own path, and here we are, obviously. So that was my first reach out a while ago before I even started doing this podcast series. Now, I did send out not long after, I sent out links for a trio of articles by a woman named Kate Bullock. I'm giving her name because she is fairly prominent in gaming. She's the current president of IGDN, better known as the Internet Gamer Development Network. I think I got that right. But she's the current president. She's known, and she also runs, I think she's one of the organizers, or at least on the organizing board of Breakout Con. She's helped with other cons. She's traveled around North America to different conventions. So she's a known commodity among people in the know and who are, well, influential in gaming, which is awesome. I love that fact. But in this trio of articles, she shares a number of incidents she's dealt with over the last year and a half herself, including the local con I mentioned earlier. And in these articles, she explains what happened, the situation, the aftermath, things that happened throughout, and how she views what can be done and why these things happened to her. And largely it had to do with the fact she was a woman. Now, she herself says it's more of an editorial piece, an opinion piece, because it is her telling her stories, or as I guess a current phrase is, telling her truth. But the fact of the matter is, a lot can be taken from these articles, learned from these articles, and both awareness, intention, and attention given to for people like me. The more you hear and the more you learn, the more you're likely to recognize it around you if and or when you see it. If you don't know about these things, you're not really going to clue into something. That's how the human mind works. If you read about things or you learn about things, then when you see it in person, or it happens in front of you in person, you kind of sit there going, hey, wait a minute. I've read something about that. That's not right. Or, hey, that's awesome, or whatever it is. The more you learn, the more you're aware of such things around you. So if anything else, I suggest people read these articles, and just, even if you don't take much from it, I guarantee you'll be a little more aware of what's going on. Now, shortly after that, I shared a video by a woman named Naomi, and she runs a YouTube channel called Sword and Steel. And the video is about getting women into gaming. Now, I watched the video. I had a couple chuckles in it because she does a little bit of reverse psychology stuff. But by and large, the advice is solid about gaming and for gaming in general. If like you have girlfriends, sisters, what have you. So I shared this. And I got a few responses. Again, by and large, it's they weren't really positive. And some of them, I would say, they probably didn't even watch the video. They just knee-jerk reaction response. But, like, example, just ask them to play, or if they ask to play, let them play. Here's the thing, guys. Women see you playing. Much like other guys, much of the time, they don't want to interrupt or encroach on your time or what you're doing, because that's your time, what you're doing. And it's not, if it was that simple, we'd have way more women gaming in general, let alone in wargaming. It's plain and simple. If it was as simple as just asking them to play, we'd have way more women playing in general. Another one was, why should I care? Well, why shouldn't you care? Like, there are women in your life that I imagine would like gaming. Give them a shot. Invite them. Don't wait for them to ask. Invite them to try. Keep inviting them. Eventually they might give it a shot and like it. But until then, they probably feel like, no, you're just being nice. So they're turning down the offer. Be genuine. That's the key. Genuine. Honest. Open. Inviting. And then there's some other ones like, I'm tired of this forced agenda to get women gaming. Well, it's not a forced agenda. They're half the population. Another one, it's okay for guys to be guys and girls to be girls. Whatever the hell that's really supposed to mean, because I know plenty of women who will kick the crap out of any guy and outplay them, hands down. Or we shouldn't be trying to force women into gaming, which, again, with my earlier post, I'm not trying to do, nor is this video. So that's an example of them not watching the video, obviously. And the one that always makes me laugh, women just aren't into gaming, to which I say bullshit. Women game just as much. I would say if given the opportunity, they might game more. Whether the type of game varies person to person, like every guy does. These days I'm more a war gamer than a role player, but I still like my role playing games. I've never been into CCGs, but I know plenty of guys who love Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't really like wargaming or RPGs. People have preferences. But to say, women just aren't into gaming is literal bullshit, in my opinion. Now, after that, there's another video about the Great War Game Survey. It's done by a magazine called War Game Soldiers and Strategy. And they took 5 years of data. And I didn't get much response on this, but I'm going to share a couple of things out of the video. That 5 years of data showed that only 1.6% of wargamers, on average, are women. That's way lower than I even expected. I was figuring, 8-9%, but 1.6, less than 2 in 100 is way lower than I was expecting. I was figuring closer to 1 in 10 maybe. And they had a couple of women on who, two different levels of experience, but shared their kind of position on it. And the one woman, she's got 15 years of experience in historical wargaming on top of that, which is an even more niche within the niche thing. And some of the things she encountered as a wargamer, even today, with 15 years of experience, is, well, if I was at the table, I'd be telling the guy off myself. But it's one of those things where you go, what are you thinking? So she's been told that being a woman will affect the outcome of a game for no other reason than being a woman, or it'll be a distraction because she's a woman. Now, I'm not sure why her being a woman is relevant. It's your opponent. play the game. And she always finds it difficult to feel acceptance when she's at events because of being a woman, which is part of the issue. These events should be open and welcoming and inclusive. That's the whole point. That's why it's an event. It's open to the public for a reason, more or less. And even in the course of playing games, she's had male players change what she's already said her units are doing in her army, and had male players move her units differently than she had moved them on her behalf, as if she was like just clueless and didn't know what she was doing. If that was another guy, you wouldn't do that. You might say, you know, that's probably not a good idea, but if that's what they want to do, you let them do it. That's how this works. But yeah, so these are all things she encountered, and she's a 15-year long war gamer and historical war gamer. Now another woman was involved. She's got a lot less experience. She's 3 years, and at first she didn't even know wargaming was a thing. So it's not something that a lot of women may even realize exists. So in my opinion, maybe we need to make it more known. Like, get it out there. Let women know, hey, you know what, this is a pretty cool game. You try it out. You like science fiction, or you like horror, or you like whatever genre. There's a war game for pretty much any and every genre out there. And with the popularity of shows like Walking Dead or Game of Thrones, and now more recently The Mandalorian and all the new Star Wars coming out, there's war games for every genre. There really is. And there's role-playing games for every genre. Hell, we're getting to the point where there's board games and CCGs for every genre, and Lord knows there's more than enough video games covering every genre. So who's to say that they shouldn't be marketed to, maybe not as much, because obviously they're not the bigger demographic, and companies always market to the biggest demographic. But still, open it up. Now, in her opinion, she thinks there's a cultural reason behind this, because kids growing up, boys play with toy soldiers, girls play with dolls, boys play with cars and tanks, girls play with horses and you know, like easy bake ovens and things like that. So, and she may be right. That might be a cultural thing, but I see a change, and she mentions this as well. Things are getting better, but it's just very slow. So in general, they still encounter issues, a lot of issues. Even judging by the woman who had 15 years experience, she encounters a lot of things which are problematic. And the funny thing is, with that video, I got very little response. And I shared it to a variety of wargaming groups too. Very little response. So a few days go by, and suddenly this thing pops on my feed. It's an article about South Park, of all things. Now, forewarned, the episode in question does deal with some transphobic symbols and issues. But the undertone of the episode is about women, girls in gaming. And I shared this. I shared the article. I thought, you know what, this is worth looking at. And I eventually watched the episode, and the trans person parts of the episode are, I will say it, straight up cringeworthy by and large. But the parts that were about girls in gaming were very pertinent and very real, as much as they might be parodied by South Park. They are real. They're real issues. So I share the article. I share another article that's a little bit longer with it. And over the next 24 hours, there were hundreds of notifications hitting my Facebook account that were comments or reactions. And I probably shared it to 12, 14 groups. And this went on throughout the entire day. So, and I was involved in some of those discussions, various groups, etc. And that went on, like I said, for the better part of the day, 24 hours, give or take. By the time I got up the next morning, I was poking around and wondered why two of the discussions were which got very lengthy and heated in some cases, but very lengthy, with a lot of good stuff going on. Didn't get any notifications from them. So I went and looked. The one group I was no longer a member of, but I could still see the posts, and the post was completely removed. The other group I was still a member of, post was removed, which means all the comments that went with it were removed. And 2 other groups also removed the post and what discussion was under it. And all 4 groups had significant discussion going on, 2 of which were very significant. A few groups had some minor discussion, and the rest had virtually none. And I'm going to go through I'm going to essentially discuss the kind of feedback I was getting. Now, I got some people who were like, you know what, this is worth discussing, and it is something that should be talked about, which obviously I agree with. I'm doing it today. Thing is, I had just as many, if not more, who repeatedly piped in with, well, you know what, this isn't a problem in my community, so I don't see the point. It's not a problem. Then there were also a few who would come in with, you know what, this isn't the place to discuss this, and it has nothing to do with this game or that game, or it's irrelevant because we don't treat people like that. To which I say it's very relevant, and gaming groups are the place to discuss it. Where else are you going to discuss it? You know, like, think about that. If you're not willing to discuss it in gaming groups, where the hell are you going to actually discuss these things? Because it's gamers who need to discuss it. Now, I also had a few ramble on about how they not to tell them how their hobby hates women and don't want women to play, which it didn't do. Basically, they went off the deep end saying, don't tell me my hobby hates women. Well, it didn't say it hates women. Don't tell me my hobby doesn't want women to play. It's not what it was saying, but okay. No, it was showing behavior that you want to avoid. In this case, very much as anybody who's watched South Park may realize, Cartman's the problem. Obviously, it's Cartman. He's always the problem. But I also had one guy, basically, he didn't say it to me directly, but it might as well have been. And that was that this whole thing is nothing but someone trying to white knight a problem that isn't real and virtual signaling by creating a problem to fix. To which I say, you're an idiot. If he happens to hear this at some point, you're an idiot, buddy. You really are. Another guy, unless you poll this guy, oh, this one actually made me laugh. And this was almost 4 or 5 days after all of this happened. And he straight up said, unless you poll every home game in every basement across America, you cannot say that this is a problem. Now, I don't know if he realizes the vast majority of games across America in people's basements and homes are played by a bunch of guys. So obviously it wouldn't be a problem there. Unless they're... I don't know. I don't know where he was going with that. You don't need to poll every game in America to understand there's a problem in gaming. It's been going on. Women have said it's been going on. The problem is guys like this guy don't want to believe it because it doesn't affect him. And I even had one, which I kind of clapped back at. It eventually disappeared because the post got deleted from this group, who straight up told a trans woman she wasn't a woman and had no business even talking about women in gaming and the issues they may face since she wasn't really a woman. And these are the guys that want to tell me, no, there's no problem with women in gaming. Makes you scratch your head, doesn't it? Really does. So all of these things, the original post, the articles by Kate, the video about getting women in wargaming, the survey, the South Park thing, all of this was over probably a period of a couple weeks. And I certainly got a takeaway from it, I'll tell you that. And what I ended up getting out of all of this is there are some people who are willing to talk about it, but unless given a venue to do so, like me posting stuff and them being able to comment, they don't. They're not the ones who are going to step up and say, hey guys, this is an issue. We need to talk about this. There's very few people who talk about it otherwise. So I would gladly say, here I am. Take aim. My shoulders are broad. I can take it. To reference The Mandalorian, I've got the best scar on my chest. I can take the blast. By all means, take your best shot. And sadly, there are many who are actually against even talking it. And some aggressively so. Name calling, insults, and the likes. And it's just they're that vehemently against discussing it. But my biggest takeaway of all, and it's actually rather disappointing to me, is that just way too many people, and by way too many people, I mean men, they just want to stick their head in the sand and ignore it, hoping it'll just go away or solve itself, and it won't. It's just going to carry on. And it'll continue to carry on as long as nobody's willing to step up and deal with it. And deal with guys like the one saying I was white knighting and virtual signaling. Dealing with guys who will call a trans woman not a real woman. Dealing with guys who just want to ignore it because unless you poll everybody, it doesn't matter because it's not a problem. And that's the part that probably bothered me the most. Like, all in all, I'm like an island unto myself here. Again, I said earlier, I'm not unused to it. I'm kind of an island unto myself socially. I'm kind of an island unto myself in my workplace to some degree. My opinions are my own. I don't give a rat's ass what you think of my opinions. But if proven wrong, given information to show that, you know what, my opinion's off base, I'll change my opinion. I've done it before. I've done it recently. I'll do it in the future. That's how being a reasonable, logical, intelligent person works. Unfortunately, I'm running into more and more people who are not logical, are unreasonable, and I'm seriously questioning their intellect. And it's sad that so many people just want to, no, you know what, out of sight, out of mind, I don't want to look at it. And that really is the thing that probably bothers me the most. And the thing is, I know people who have had issues. And I'm going to share some of those here shortly. And it just goes to show, in some ways, it goes to show it goes beyond the actual gaming side of things, too. For example, one woman I know, she's been a gamer for like 30 years. She ran a website. She was also moderator on the supporting forums. She's basically a bigwig of this website and forum because she's helped running it. And anytime she had to hand down warnings or suspensions for bad behavior to men, I will say, because she specified, it was a 50-50 chance that she'd get threats of physical harm or rape, including one guy who threatened to find out where she lives, find her, rape her, and kill her. But according to some people, well, we don't have a problem in gaming. And we don't have a problem with women in gaming. Another friend of mine, she works in the electronics department of a store. And she's routinely dismissed in regards to video games, science fiction, electronics in general, because she's a woman, so they don't think she knows what she's talking about, even though her male coworkers will actually go get her to answer questions. Now, on top of that, she's had guys say, once they realize how knowledgeable she is, tell her that her being knowledgeable like that is quote-unquote hot. Now, if that's not creepy and cringy, I have no idea what is, because that is exactly what that is, creepy and cringy. And the last story I'm gonna share is one related to me by a male friend of someone he knew. She was an Asian girl who was new to gaming, so she got into, I don't know if it was D&D or Pathfinder or something. And to save time, according to GM, he made a character for her rather than walking her through the process. So the character she was given was an Asian whore. Yes, whore, W-H-O-R-E, whore. And they got into the game. And at some point during the game, her character was gang raped. She wasn't asked if that was okay. She wasn't asked or given any input on the matter. And the GM just sloughed it off like it was, oh, it's completely appropriate because of the character you're playing and whatnot. And the other players were all in on it. They were fine with it. Thankfully, according to my friend anyway, she got out of that group very quickly, and she stayed in gaming though. She found another group, and I think she played with him at some point. But like for me, something like that is bullshit. That you don't do that to a new player. That's one way to make sure that they may not be a continuing player. And then on top of that, like I'm just going to mention this in passing, but let's also, anybody who's a video gamer out there, I'm not really one, but I know several. Everyone will remember Gamergate from 4 or 5 years ago. That was a big deal where people were getting women were being doxxed and threatened and harassed and stalked. And I don't know what guys are thinking, but that's utter bullshit. And is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. And this is what I'm trying to get at. There's so much out there that guys like, well, not so much me now because I'm a lot more aware of it now than I ever was before, like a couple of years ago. But there's guys out there who are just completely oblivious. And they think, and in some ways they'll think this is okay. And those guys, I swear if something like that happens around me, I'm punching somebody in the mouth. I'll take the night in jail. But these are just random stories from people I happen to know. Not to mention, even my best friend's wife, I look back and realize I kind of instinctively put myself as a bit of a shield between her and the other gamers we had, more because the other gamers were kind of clueless as to what they were doing. They were very socially inept. But I helped her. I made sure she got to say what she needed to say and do what she wanted to do rather than being run roughshod by other gamers who are like, oh, we got to do this and we got to do that. I don't know had anything to do with her being a woman. I know it definitely had a lot to do with the fact she's not a gamer. She was taking part because, well, her husband's running the game. Well, husband now. But she wanted to take part. And she had fun. And so I helped. She really didn't know what she was doing. And this happens to people everywhere. Like people who say, well, locally, this doesn't happen locally. Yeah, it does. You just don't see it. And you don't see it because it doesn't affect you. It may not happen right beside you or right in your face, but I guarantee it happens in every local gaming community on the planet. Well, maybe not on the planet, but at least in North America. And it's bothersome. It really is. It really is bothersome. And I'm kind of at the end of my rope as to why people want to behave this way towards women. It's like, this isn't some sanctuary. Gaming's not a sanctuary. Gaming is a hobby. Gaming can be an escape, but it's not a sanctuary from anything. Now, originally, I was going to discuss LGBTQ plus as part of this, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'm not so sure delving into that can be delved into because it's much bigger than a gaming issue. For starters, a person's sexual preference really is irrelevant, and most people won't know what it is anyway. A trans man will be treated more or less like a man unless otherwise indicated. A trans woman would generally be treated like a woman, so would fall under the issues that women face in gaming. So unless the person's sexual preference or the fact they are trans or in transition, I'm not really sure how to phrase that. Unless it's outed somehow, it won't likely have any influence. Because if people don't know you're a trans woman or a trans man, if people don't know you're if you're gay, lesbian, queer, bisexual, non-gender conforming, gender fluid, if people don't know this, they're going to treat you as you act, I would hope. Now, the problem is if these things do come out and then they do influence their treatment of these people, the problem we now run into is that's not a gaming issue. That's a beyond gaming issue. That is a major societal issue that we are still dealing with. And happening in gaming is just a microcosm of the bigger societal issue in this regard. But I will say this. We have at least 3 trans women in our local gaming community. And I've already told at least one person off when they referred to one of the trans women as an it. And I straight up said, she has a name. This is her name. That's what you call her. The other 2, I think, as far as I know, the one I know doesn't run into an issue, but by and large, the gamers in my specific community know her well, and she takes part, and she's accepted as who she is. And the other trans woman, I'm not 100% sure. I don't see her around much, and I think she may actually run into some issues. None that I've seen, and I guarantee if something happens beside me, someone will get thrown over a table, because I'm not going to put up with that, and I know other people who will not put up with that. But by and large, that's why I'm not really discussing the LGBTQ aspect of this, because that aspect is way bigger than just gaming, and really not something I can touch on in a podcast of this nature at the moment. It's just, it's one of those things. Now, no doubt, if you're not thinking this question already, I've already had people ask, why are you doing this? Well, there's a few reasons I'm doing it. One, I have 2 daughters. Now, I will be the first to say their experiences within a gaming store, science fiction convention, anime convention, out and about in general, thankfully have been largely positive. But I know for a fact my oldest daughter did feel uncomfortable in a local gaming store at one point, more than once, when she went in with her friend, because they were the only girls in the store, and they felt like they were like being watched. They felt it was kind of creepy. But by and large, I'm happy to say their experiences across the board have been very positive, and I am so thankful for that, being my daughters, because, well, they're my daughters. I'd kill for them. They're my daughters. That's the way it is, you know. Now, I also have a son. I want my son to treat women with respect. I want to treat them as equals, be it gaming or otherwise. I can't do that by telling him, but I can do that by showing him. And that's one of the things I'm doing with this, is like I'm trying to lead by example. And that's the only way I know how. Now, this is the obvious one. Women are half the population. If we get more women into gaming, our hobby grows exponentially. And I'm not kidding, exponentially. It expands. The more the merrier, in my opinion. And I'll tell you right now, women are just as competitive as men. And a lot of guys may not realize that. Excuse me. The thing is, like it or not, and guys, you may not want to admit this or not. You may not want to admit this, and I guarantee there's a lot of guys who deny this is the case. But again, the vast majority of gamers, regardless of game type, are straight, white men, boys, whatever way you want to call it. By default, we're the gatekeepers. That's just reality. We're the gatekeepers. End of story. We may not realize we are. We may not be doing it intentionally, but we are effectively the gatekeepers. And as such, if we are not the ones who take a stand against this stuff, if we are not the ones who step up and deal with it, or if we're not the ones to make the environment more open, welcoming, and inclusive of women, it's not going to get done. Not easily. And it's still not going to be easy, even if we do. But the fact of the matter is, unless the vast majority of straight white men start realizing, you know what, this is bullshit, we need to step up and fix this and deal with this and make it more available to women, not just men, this is going to keep perpetuating itself for years, if not decades to come. And that's reality. Plain and simple. And I don't offer any solutions, because they're really the solutions are, don't be an asshole. Like, don't act different towards women. That's reality. It's don't act different towards women. Plain and simple. Now, I think I've rambled on enough here. Again, I don't have any solutions. I can only act in my own opinion. I cannot act on others' behalf. I can't speak really on others' behalf. I'm doing this more to open your eyes and make hopefully more people become aware of that these issues exist. Because way too many people think, oh, that's isolated. Oh, that's just a coincidence. Oh, that doesn't happen that often. Happens way more often than you think. And damn it, women deserve to be included, not be excluded. That's the matter. And damn it, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. That's what it is. Like, I may come off angry. I may have come off angry in parts of this, and because, for fuck's sakes, I am angry. It's bullshit. Women shouldn't be treated like this. In a hobby I love, I'll make sure none are when I'm around. I can't say the same for others, but I'm hoping this will open people's eyes and make people more aware. And I'm going to continue to do what I think is right. Stand up to these people who might, like, degrade women in gaming or say shit about them and whatnot. And I've done it before. I'll do it again, and I'm going to continue doing it. Because I'm going to tell you straight up, we can't discuss or fix problems in our hobby if we're not willing to even admit they exist. And that's the case with all kinds of things. If you can't admit there's a problem, you're going to keep having the problem. And if you're not willing to fix the problem, then other people can't fix it for you. Gaming is a privilege, everyone. It's not a right. It's something we do for entertainment, not for power trips, not for anything else. And I've seen a number of people use their position and influence locally as a power play. And those people, I'm tired of them. Because it is a privilege, not a right. And the thing is, you have to act. Talking about it doesn't fix anything. Doing fixes it. And I've always said that, and I try to live by it. You don't talk. Try talking, but generally doing gets things done. Talking usually won't. Anyway, I think I've talked your ear off about this enough, and I actually feel better about getting it off my mind. I hope this has opened the eyes of some of the people listening right now. And just watch around. If you see a woman struggling with gaming, take her under your wing, help her out. If she doesn't want the help, then fine. But it doesn't hurt to offer. And don't offer it in a condescending way. Be genuine. Be honest. Play her like she's just a new gamer or a normal average opponent. But be welcoming. Be open. This has been Gamez According to Jaymz. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time.